Hi folks, Gordon Brewer here. Welcome back. This is lesson 4 of Love the Work, Hate the Job. So glad you're with me again. This lesson is going to be about what to do to get referrals once you've got your private practice started or even before you start your private practice. So we're talking about marketing and talking about what you can do to bring in multiple streams of referrals and to get steady streams of referrals. And also we're going to talk about how to handle clients once they call and a little bit about that process. So let's jump into Love the Work, Hate the Job, Lesson 4. In this final lesson, or Lesson 4 of Love the Work, Hate the Job, we're going to be talking about getting referrals and seeing clients. And when I think about getting referrals, really what I'm talking about is how to market your practice. I know marketing is probably seen by some as a 4-letter word, or it's more letters than that, obviously, but seeing that as a kind of one of those words that is a little bit intimidating, or maybe a little bit of a turnoff when you think about marketing something, or even worse, having to sell something. But one of the things about private practice that's important to remember is that you've got to get your name out there. You can't just build it and they will come using that field of dreams mentality. You've got to build it, tell people about it, then they will come. So that's an important thing to remember. I love this quote by Mark Zuckerberg. I'll get his name right here. People influence people. Nothing influences people more than a recommendation from a trusted friend. A trusted referral influences people more than the best broadcast message. A trusted referral is the holy grail of advertising. So let's look at what we're going to talk about during this lesson. First of all, I'm going to talk about having an online presence and the fact that you need to have a website. And your website is really kind of the hub of your marketing. So the first place people are going to go to try to find a therapist or find out about counseling services is the internet. So that's so important to keep that in mind. The other things we're going to talk about is using social media and how to do that in an ethical and correct way. Also talk about some directories. Probably the best known directory for counselors and therapists as far as marketing their practices is the Psychology Today directory. So we'll talk some about that. And then also the importance of personal and professional contacts. Got to have those as well, and those are big drivers for bringing in referrals, and also give your practice a lot of credibility when you have those. Thinking about Mark Zuckerberg's quote, having those personal referrals are really gold when it comes to marketing your practice. And then we'll also talk about some of the benefits and so the pros and cons of being on insurance panels. And a lot has to do with how you set up your business model for how you set up your practice, but we'll talk some more about that. So let's jump into talking about some of these things. As I've mentioned already, having a website is absolutely a must. I mean, it is really, at least for me in my practice and what I've learned over the 10 years that I've been in private practice, is that your website will be your number one referral source. And especially in this day and time when we are so dependent on the internet and everything is very internet driven now, having a great website is going to go a long way with bringing in referrals. The thing about your website is that there are 2 different ways you can go about starting a website. One is the do-it-yourself, or another way of putting that is bootstrapping, where you learn how to construct a website, you learn a little bit about coding, all of those things, which really isn't hard to do. If I learned it, you can learn it, and that's how I do all of my websites, both my private practice websites and also my consulting websites. I do it myself using WordPress as the content management system. I'm not going to go into how to do that here, but certainly look at the links in the worksheets that will show you how to start a website and some of the options around that. The other option, other than doing it yourself, is to have somebody do it for you. And for some people, that might just be their only option, or they might see that as their only option. The downside with having somebody else create your website is that it's not as easy to go in and make changes and add stuff. Certainly, depending on who your webmaster is or who you get to design your website, might give you a little more leeway in terms of being able to change things on your website and getting those done in a timely manner. One of the services that I recommend, and again, you can get links to this on my website, is a company called Brighter Visions, and they are really geared towards therapists and really help people with all aspects of building a website, even down to SEO, search engine optimization, which I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But again, if you'll go to my website, The Practice of Therapy, you can see some links on there. Especially, I think they're down at the bottom of the page for Brighter Visions, and you can get hooked up with them. It is an affiliate link, so it does mean that I get a commission if you sign up through Brighter Visions at no extra cost to you. So just like to have full disclosure there on that. The other thing about websites is you need to be able to focus on your SEO. Now, SEO, if you don't know what that is just simply means search engine optimization. So, you know, like anything, when we go to find something on the web, we will type in some keywords or some search terms. And when those go into Google, it searches the internet for things that match up the most with those search terms. Now, as you also know, is that on a Google search, there are several, maybe hundreds or thousands of pages on Google that come up. And really, for search engine optimization, that means making sure that your website comes up on that first Google page. And there are a lot of things that go into that as far as creating the things in your website that will get you ranked higher in Google and other search engines. So those are things to take into consideration. Again, I'm not going to go into search engine optimization here, but there are several. Again, if you'll look at some of the blog articles I've written on the practice of therapy, I talk about this more. The other thing about websites to take into consideration when you start to design or build your website really needs to be focused on getting people to call you. After all, that's the bottom line of why you have the website. Certainly you want to give people good information and helpful information, but the bottom line to a website and from a marketing standpoint is getting people to call you. So let's talk about that a little bit more. You know, when you build your website or start writing for your website, one of the mistakes people make is that they will talk about how great they are as a therapist. And that's really not a good marketing tactic. Really, a website, especially for a counseling or a therapy website, it needs to be client-centered. In other words, you're addressing the problems that the client might be having, the things that they struggle with. So when you write your copy, it needs to be about that. You don't need to talk about you so much, but really talk more about how you will help the client. Some quick tips on websites as well. It's always good to have a video on there somewhere or have videos embedded in the website. And again, not going to go into the technical details about that, but one of the best things that you can do, and the search engines like this as well, is to do an introductory video, just telling about your practice, how you help people, what particular problems you help people with, and then maybe a little bit about your qualifications and you as a therapist. And that sort of thing goes a long way in helping people make a decision. I can't tell you how many times I've got two websites, my group practice website and then my personal website. But on my personal website, I do have a video on there, which is just an introduction. And can't tell you how many times people tell me that they decided to come see me because they watched my video. So again, that's a big thing to keep in mind when you think about websites. The other aspect of having an online presence with your practice is having social media. Now, the thing about social media is you have to be certainly be aware of confidentiality with clients and being able to know how to market to potential clients without breaking confidentiality or without being intrusive. And certainly there are a lot of different ways to do this. The social media that you choose to be active on, I would just say pick the one that you are active on. Certainly there are different social media sites that appeal to us more for different reasons. The other thing to consider about social media is really thinking about the demographics of your ideal client. Certainly you would want to be active on those platforms depending on those demographics. So for example, if you were trying to attract maybe a niche of women in their 20s and 30s and maybe early 40s, you might want to look at Pinterest because that's where a lot of people in that demographic will be. Certainly Facebook is probably the most broad social media site out there. LinkedIn is really geared more towards professionals, and I think for some reason I think of Twitter as being geared more towards men, and more men are on Twitter. Certainly the millennials you'll find on Instagram. Others, of course, are Snapchat, and we could probably list out hundreds of social media sites. But think about the demographics of the people that you want to be attracting to your practice and be active on those social media sites based on the demographics. But the thing to consider with social media is that it is social. In other words, you want to be able to engage with people, but being able to do it in a way that is ethical and also keeps within our ethical boundaries. Certainly know your ethics. One of the things that most all of our professional associations have are our code of ethics. And most of them now have very specific things about the use of social media and how to do that in an ethical way. One thing that I would really highly recommend is that you develop a social media policy for your practice. If you were to download my paperwork packet, I've got examples of those in the paperwork packet, but that is an important piece in thinking about developing your online presence, to keep things ethical and to make sure that you're doing it in a way that's not going to harm clients or break confidentiality. Another suggestion to make in thinking about social media is it is possible for you to set up separate pages or accounts or whatever for your practice. And it's a good idea to probably keep your personal and professional social media accounts separate as much as possible. I know for on Facebook, Facebook does allow you to create business pages that are connected to your account, but you can control how people interact with those pages differently than you would your personal account. So those are things to think about with social media. Social media, I think, is certainly really in a way, Facebook is almost a must in this day and time as far as having a platform for marketing. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of details about the ins and outs of marketing on social media, but those are things to think about as you build your online presence.